Thank you, ma'am. Very good evening to one and all. Respected sir, can we proceed with the session?
Sure. Please go ahead.
You cannot go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Good evening to one and all present here, and warm welcome to the technical session 8 on the topic NEP 2020, Making Quality Happen in Schools Through Sustainable Practices of the 7th All India Educators Meet organized by Kristu Jyanti College, Autonomous, Bangalore. It's universally accepted that the future of a nation is built in its classrooms. Education liberates the intellect, unlocks the imagination, and is a fundamental for self-respect. The best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today. Let today be the start for something new. I extend a warm welcome to our resource person, Dr. Sendil Kumaran, Chief Confluencer, the Learners Confluence, Bangalore. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. A hearty welcome to all the delegates who have joined virtually from different parts of the country. I would like to welcome all the faculty members of Kristu Jyanti College who have joined for this session. Welcome one and all. And I deem it a privilege to introduce the resource person for the session, Dr. Sendil Kumaran, Chief Confluencer and co-founder, the Learners Confluence, Bangalore. With over 3 decades of experience in educational field, Dr. Sendil has started groundbreaking work in the form of Learners Confluence, an educational service in India. The Learners Confluence is an educational program focused on developing a technology platform for teachers with the goals of enhancing peer learning as well as knowledge sharing. Dr. Sendil was the principal counselor and head education excellence initiatives of the CII Institute of Quality until July 31st, 2016. Sir joined the CII IQ in April 2002, until recently has been helping educational institutions to accelerate their journey in excellence in India and abroad. Dr. Sendil worked as a faculty member of the strategic core group in Christ University, Bangalore for 10 years before embarking the journey with CII IQ. In his previous role, he was responsible for many novel educational initiatives, education excellence program, international learning missions to Singapore and Finland. Dr. Sendil cultivated best practice forums and school excellence concaves, both at national and regional level. With goals of promoting the concept of excellence in education in every state within India and other countries, Sir has traveled to many places, sharing his knowledge with people. He also organizes a monthly program on the Facebook called #3 Saval, where he shares his knowledge with the teachers of schools and various institutions. Sir, we are very privileged to have you amongst us. Kindly take over the session, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia, and thank you, Team Kristu Jyanti, for getting me again back into the next episode of your Educators Conclave. I think it's always a pleasure to be here on this particular forum and trying to share some of my thoughts. And I would invite any kind of questions and suggestions, whatever you think are there as part of this particular, chat box itself. You can use it, or later at the end, if there's a time which has been provided, surely I'll be more than happy to kind of get into the session. But before we get into the session, I think it's equally important for us also to understand, appreciate this particular factor that while everybody talked about COVID, I think I should thank Dr. Richard to take up that very important point, which he kind of touched upon when it comes to the teacher perspective as such. Everyone is trying to talk about learning loss, but I think there is something which is also very actively happening, which is called as teacher burnout. And this particular burnout is psychological, physical, emotional, and I think he covered quite well in the earlier session. I was able to hear the last part of the conversation, but thank you, Richard. I think it made a lot of sense for many of the teachers and leaders who are here in this particular forum to take the discussion to the next level. But I think I kind of came in for a topic which everybody is, trying to see whether it will work, whether it will not work, not very sure whether it is applicable to India, not applicable to India. But let me tell you that any education policy in any particular country, when you try to talk about, I think we really need to understand this particular perspective that any policy is only a policy until unless it gets implemented in the total letter and spirit what it is being kind of designed upon. But just to quickly kind of take you through these, my thought process per se as such. The first and the foremost thing, this is my standard disclaimer. Whatever ideas, input, suggestions I'm giving, they are just ideas based on our own internal research. We would request you to go back and start looking at what is your state government saying, what is your regulator and statutory affiliating board trying to talk about it. I think that's going to be helpful for all of you. I may use a lot of images because when you try to do an online session, one of the key learnings which I picked up was that use a lot of image because images with your statements complement each other quite well. And that's my learning through the COVID time per se as such. Many people, there are different reasons, there are different purposes. And what I have seen is that people have been very, very selective. People have been very, very selective when it comes to new education policy per se as such. People say it's good, people say it's bad, it is for, it is against, but please try to understand it is just policy. Until unless it is trying to kind of contextualize to my own thought process as such, my own environment as such. And don't get carried by whatever that has been happening. Because one of my attempts in this particular session today, is also going to be that how do I try to, help people to basically understand, appreciate what exactly is happening in terms of whenever we try to talk about a policy per se. Because many a times when we try to talk about policy, it will surely impact one particular set of people who have not been following certain protocols. And that's something very, very important. Now, going forward, people say, will it help a teacher? No. So probably if I have to try to look at it, today one of the challenges for the teachers is this reports, parents, bill, testing, meetings, lesson plan. Whether this will change? No, it is not going to change. It will still be same. The second important thing, do you think that with the professional standards coming in, we will move from this level to that level? I'm not still very, very sure about it, whether that will actually happen. Because at the end of the day, we are supposed to lead. People try to talk about resource sharing, because in India, when you try to talk about resource sharing, it is still what is available. In that itself, how are you trying to run around it? And it may or may not happen. I'm not very sure. But one thing is very, very clear that people have a lot of confidence. I don't know what you are trying to make sense out of this particular image, particularly as such, but it says very, very strongly that NEP is like this particular thing. Somebody has a faith that it can be pushed into it. There is somebody who's just holding his hand with a stick in the hand and saying that he's going to push it across. So we really need to understand this particular perspective, that whenever we are trying to talk to about any particular policy, but this particular policy, probably for me, when I try to look at as an educator or as a teacher, as somebody who works in the space of education, I believe this is just back to the basics. Because if you're not going to go back to the basics, because we have never done certain things in our institutions from that particular perspective, so that we can actually understand. And that's where I know that this is a very short session. I will leave a lot of time for question answers. Let me try how quickly I can kind of sum up, and then I'll take the question answers specifically when it comes from the quality perspective as such. And whenever we try to talk about the quality perspective, it is not about the person who's experiencing it, but the community around it, how exactly they are trying to find value in that particular policy and value in that particular education institution. It is not that particular school which is getting affected. It is the whole community which gets affected. Recently, I was reading about one particular school in Lonavala getting closed. When I was reading about this particular thing, somebody said, no, the school is decided to close down. But now there are certain things which are running above, outside the purview of the discussion. But when you try to talk about that particular institution or any institution for that matter, it can be just a one-line email or a paragraph of email and then say, we are closed tomorrow morning. But please understand the stakeholders of education, the stakeholder of schools, the service providers, the people who infra-maintenance people work, the teachers, the students, the parents, the community around this. I think something very, very important. And whenever we try to talk about education, I think we have to be very, very cautious, and particularly in schools. What I have understood, as being a teacher for 30 plus years in this particular space, working with different kinds of institutions, right from a mission institution to a so-called international within India and outside institution. But everywhere, I think somewhere we have started drifting away from the basic. And that's where what I believe that this particular policy is emphasizing that what is that learning that is going to be kind of I'm not here to kind of, give any gyan on new education policy. I'm here only referring to something which is commonly documents available in the public domain. And my presentation is also connected to this only, except in one particular place. I will be touching on a self-assessment manual of SQA, which has been done. If you try to look at any education policy, at the end of the day, the purpose is the child. If the focus is not on the child, then I think the whole effort gets out. And that's where I feel. I think the new education policy kind of brought in that kind of focus to the child. Because always we have been in a typical school scenario, we have been always complaining that first standard teacher said nothing is being taught in the early years. The fifth standard teacher says nothing is being taught in 1 to 4. The eighth standard teacher complains, they are not able to even say anything out of it. And 9, 10, 11, 12, God only can say. Because many times when we try to look at this particular space of education, everybody thinks that what they are doing is the best, but there is nothing which is happening. It's unfortunate to say that senior class teachers don't even know what happens in middle school, and middle school people don't even know what happens in the primary or pre-primary. We have been trying to do verticalizations in school, and I'll show you an example of it. When we try to talk about verticalization of the departments in the camps in respective schools to ensure quality of the standardization of practices, standardization of the approaches, what is being done, I don't even find. Many people have beautiful curriculum framework templates we keep creating, but it doesn't go. It is like the same story. There is a rat, there is a cat, there is a dog, there is a man, and there is a supervisor to that man, and there is a principal also sitting, and then there is a governing council which is sitting to take care, to ensure that the rat doesn't eat away the greens. So now that's the kind of a story which we are trying to talk about. But please try to understand. One of my efforts is going to be, let me try to delete, because thanks to this WhatsApp university, which has dumped so much of junk on us, so much of junk. One error by somebody and it just gets forwarded. And my request to all the teachers here that in case if you have not read the NEP, please go back and read the document. If you have not read the document, don't even forward anything. Because anything which gets forwarded from you becomes a Vedavakya for other people to follow. Because other people said, oh, my principal has given this. My teachers have given this. And one request to teachers, there is, with COVID coming in, you have created so many official WhatsApp groups. You have created so many of class groups that you don't know what junk is getting into which particular group. So be very, very careful about it and think twice even before you're trying to work on it. Many people say that NEP is like playing kabaddi. Yes, any policy in the country is like this only. Somehow you have to go and touch the line and then say the policy is complete or we have achieved the goal. But we really need to understand why are we trying to talk about a policy like this and what is something which is going to work. One and the foremost thing, I think many people sitting in this particular hall or in this particular forum, around 400 plus people are there. 400 plus people will, I'm sure that less than 10% of people will actually know what is the dropout rate from the LKG to 12 standard or to the degree. It is almost 60% of people who drop after grade 10. There is another 40%, another 20% gets dropped at 11 and 12, and another 20% gets dropped at the graduation. Now, just how do you try to make sure that this particular thing is trying to getting into it? You go to a college and they say, oh, your basics are wrong. You have taken up entrance, you have come and you try to work on it. No, we really need to understand this particular perspective, that whole model is all about the competency-based framework. I know that there are a lot of friends from Kristu Jyanti higher education institutions who are participating in this particular program. I can tell you very confidently, one thing which happens with all of us, is that we think competency-based is something which we have done. Still, we struggle to write a LO. Still, we struggle to write what competencies will be achieved in which particular grade. People try to create designs while mapping it, but it is still a big challenge. I have been going and trying to look at many schools when I try to talk about it, but I don't find that as a very, very interesting thing which is kind of coming in. So we really need to understand, appreciate this particular perspective, that whenever we are trying to talk about new education policy, it's all about ensuring that dropouts should come down. The second important thing is that it talks about light and tight curriculum. It is right. Most of the researchers have said that Indian curriculum is the most aspirational curriculum. It is given overaged. It doesn't take care of the requirement of age appropriateness. So that's something very, very important. The third important thing is that learning world to world of work. What is this learning world to world of work? When it is a competency driven, then the competency is required for a role. When this particular kid is going to go back and work, will make a lot of life sense. That's where when you have a piece in higher education, which is already competency driven, and you start going down very, very clearly, which is important. The policy also talks about empowering teachers. First time for the in the country or in the history, the teachers will also be called as professionals. Professionals is the first thing which has been done. So there is something called as National Professional Standards for Teachers. The draft copy is already out. Please go back and work on it and take pride in saying that you are also a teacher. Because many a times people say, "Kuch nahi mila, finally you became a teacher." That thing must not happen, and that's something which you really need to look at. It also talks about that you can't keep on the brick and mortar model is going to get out. There's a new model which is going to come up that people are trying to talk about hybrid. I know of a school which is already done clocked around 8,000 plus students. So what does it talk about? That means there is a alternative system which is trying to come in. And if that system is going to come in, maybe some of the components like emotional, social skills and all those skills will get little challenged. But I think it's very important for us to understand that there's going to be a shift which is going to happen and people will start looking at utilizing the available resources. The last important part is the school always has to be part of a community. It's only in India that we have a national building code which says that before even you construct your school, you're supposed to have your compound wall first in place and then you should construct. So when you create a compound wall, the first and the foremost thing is you're never part of a community. You go to the West and look at any other Western countries, you'll be able to see there are no compound walls or there are maybe just small fences which people can jump over and just come into the school. And I think that's something very, very important, which we really need to look at it. Now, going forward from here on that particular area, what we are trying to look at is, I think this is where I was trying to talk about that we are now moving into education 4.0, where a lot of innovations will be required. And this is where when you're trying to look about the pedagogical structure is moving towards that particular direction. I'm not going to, this is not something which we need to talk about here, but we really need to understand the purpose. So if you understand that we are moving from 1 to 4, I think where are we in this particular thing? Thanks to COVID again, at least which told us, please open the computer and start knowing how to start putting the PPT together. Because many people even never bothered about it. All those heroes and heroines in subject in various schools, the senior people suddenly became dummy. Why they became dummy? Because they never had the technology orientation. And all those people youngsters who were playing with the mobiles suddenly became heroes and heroines in the campus during the COVID time. And that was a very, very interesting time. This is where I say seniors learning, seniors experience, juniors technology integration. I think that only will drive a school. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But all this is for what? There is a beautiful document which is available of OECD. You can go back and download. It's around 60-page document. Please download and read, which basically, this is what, if you try to read the new education policy, it is trying to align to a larger framework, which is called as 2030. Many of you might have heard of a word called as PISA. Now, if you try to look at PISA, Performance of International School Student Assessment, that's something which India will have to align. It is not only for education, it will give credit for India also to do part of the economic growth worldwide. So it will give you credits based on your education performance. People will say, what is the relationship with the education and the business which is to be done? There is a direct correlation between that. And I think many people don't know this. So please go back and try to read this, because these are the things which are very, very important. People are trying to talk about competencies, which is knowledge, skill, and attitude plus values. Once you try to entangle, and that's going to be the action plan, which we are. So the framework part, the quality framework, is all about this as the first area to look at. I'm not going to focus on many things. There are a list of things which we can do, and we have just 40 minutes. In 40 minutes, I'm just wanting to look at only 3 areas: teaching, learning, practice, pedagogical structure, learning world to world of work. So only these 3 areas, and they're all intertwined. So that's why I took up these areas so that it becomes easier. Teaching, learning, practice in our environment is the core process for a school. It is a core process. In the past, we have been, reality is something like this. The teaching, learning, practice in Indian schools, somewhere according to me, resembles this particular picture. We design a beautiful lesson plan, but when we go to implementing it, assessing it, taking learning from it, reflection from it, we don't know how exactly. So this is where there is a beautiful planning which happens for the teaching learning. But when it comes to execution, taking reflections out of it and then try to make sense out of it. And that's what, if you try to look at the pedagogical structure, I will show you there. There again, you'll be able to see that it is all about experiential learning, which has been talked about very, 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 very clearly. And if you don't have that, we will get into trouble. See, for me, when I try to look at as a teacher, this is the standard teaching learning process. There is a planning process, there is the implementation, there is a study, and there is the act. Now we work with hundreds and hundreds of schools in the country. One of the challenges which we have seen is till date, people don't know how to write LO. Learning outcomes is still a challenge for many people. They don't even understand that how exactly to do it. They are trying to talk about assessment without even knowing what is the outcome that is being expected. So the correlation of this particular practice itself is missing. So when we are trying to talk about that objectives, we'll still write in our lesson plan objectives. Lesson plan till date is written for the coordinator in most of the schools, I can say. It is written for the principal to put a sign. It is written for the statutory authority, state government authority, who will come time to time to see whether your teachers are writing it or not. I think that's something very, very important. We really need to understand for whom are we planning, why are we planning, and what if. This is a basic thing. When I ask people, let me see, let few people write down here, what is PKC? Let's put it in the chat box. What is PKC in a teaching learning practice? Let me see how many people can answer this particular thing. What is PKC and what is MLL? And this is a first step when we try to talk about a lesson plan or a teaching learning practice. All of us have gone through this, and I don't get I'm not even getting an answer. PKC. I'm repeating it again. PKC. What is PKC? And I'm sure because we have studied this, and when as soon as I'm going to say, people say, "Sir, we knew the answer, and we could have told you that answer." It is nothing but previous knowledge of the child's family, child's learning style. How many times are we trying to talk about it? How many times are we trying to talk about it? We really need to understand this particular perspective. We have to understand this particular perspective. If we don't know whom we are addressing and what is the area that we are trying to address and how he is going to learn, then I think why are we trying to do a teaching learning practice? Whether it is school or higher education, the scenario is same. How many of us even know the parental profile of our own children who are coming to our school? Please go back and reflect. You have this particular data in application. Every year you are taking that particular data, but you're not using that particular data. The second, implementation as per the plan. We may design a beautiful, that's where intentionally I showed the plan is beautiful. You have a helmet, you have a bike, you have everything ready. But when you try to go back for implementation, there is a huge gap which is being visible. So we don't know what are the strategies. So when you try to talk about 5 + 3 + 3 + 4, do we know what are the 5 + 3 + 3 + 4 strategies that have been commonly agreed in every subject? In every subject. I'm talking about first 5 years, 3 years, 3 years, and last 4 years, 9 to 12. So we really need to understand this particular perspective that, yes, if we don't design things properly, we are not going to. Every LO which is there in your book, whatever is being, will be shared with you by the boards. Please go back and start contextualizing to the environment wherever you're located. Even if you're located in Siliguri, you should be able to implement it. If you're sitting in Kerala, if you're sitting in Gujarat, you should be able to go back and work on it. And that's something very, very important. The second important thing which really need to kind of, work on all these spaces is go back and implement all these strategies and the assessment methods. Once you start implementing the strategy and assessment method, I can tell you, you need to start looking at it. And this is where one of the weakest link which I have seen is the reflection. Many schools don't even have the reflection section at all in the lesson plan. So probably go back and start looking at it. And that will be the smallest section in the lesson plan. Sir, what to write there is nothing. But please understand the profile of people, the content, the assessment strategies, the process of education experience. If that is not being kind of taken into account, you will not be able to appreciate this whole thought process first. So please understand, study it, and then you are supposed to bridge and take it across. Dr. Richard made a mention about the bridge programs and other programs. I can tell you, bridge programs, 15 days people have done a ritual. It is like a 15-day ceremony which is happening in many schools. We are trying to go and ask people, Did you do an assessment? Did you do a diagnostic assessment of a child who came to your classroom? What is the level of achievement of that particular person? I'm not very sure. So first and the foremost thing, if while defining a quality standard, you should have this as a very clearly defined. What is my school management's aspiration? What is school team aspiration? What is the parent profile that we are catering? What is the kind of student who's coming? What is the community we are trying to cater? And what is the affiliating board's aspiration? Because each one of these stakeholder profile, if we don't have, we will never be able to understand why are we there even existing. Not only that, how many times did we actually go back? How many times did we go back and actually segment our students in this kind of things? Whether they are visual, whether they are kinesthetic, we really need auditory, what kind of learning process, what kind of learners are sitting in my classroom. That is where PKC is all about. When we try to talk about the new education policies, quality standards, it is specifically asking for competencies, not for numbers. So what is one of the very, very important things which will be looked out, which all of you may have to put it, is achievement of LO will become your award and recognition. So you may have to put the achievement of LO on your website, and that will become a quality standard for you. Because people will not say how many awards you got, how many paid awards you got, how many PhDs you bought out. All that is not going to work. You can fool that for over a period of time. But in new education policy, this is very, very, very clearly defined that if you have not been able to achieve the competencies, you are not going to go anywhere. That's where CUCET kind of things have already started coming in. Many people are laughing. In 2019, when I did a presentation on my Facebook Live about new education policy, many people say, Sandil, you are all, these things will not happen in India. It is 2022. Already there is a common entrance examination for all the degree programs for all the degree programs. And this will, over a period of time, take everybody into account. So the subject competency will be required only till a particular level, but people have to kind of work on it. It is not, that's where you will be able to see the new education policy is also talking about integration. If you're a CBSE school, you will surely know that the CBSE has sent you art integration, music integration, dance integration, sport integration. Already it has started happening in the teaching learning practice. This was supposed to be done because you are supposed to look out of this kind of profile of people. You're supposed to cater to this kind of profile of people. That's where integration was required. Is it not basic which was supposed to be done? It was not done. That's where today we have a circular which has been sent and said that you are supposed to go back and work on it. In the new policy, the standards, whatever you are going to go back and work on it, the standards have to be contextualized. If it is not contextualized, it is of no use. So history teachers, get ready, 40% of Indian history. Forget about Indian history. You have to, suppose if you are from Bangalore, you really need to know why the name Bangalore came in for this particular part of it. The interesting aspect is the history, whatever we are trying to talk about, also needs to be contextualized and localized. And Delphine, I think I would request you to put the question on the chat box and then we will kind of come back and I'll answer that. So please understand this particular perspective that the contextualization is going to play a very, very important role. Not only the contextualization, we also need to look at something called as 360-degree report. I was talking to somebody, what is this 360-degree report card? Many people say, sir, now we have to, first we were having A4 size sheet. Now, okay, I've got a question coming in from saying that, can you please explain 360 on a direct message? I'll answer that. Give me some time. What is very, very important is 360-degree is not 360-degree. You stand all around and 360 happens. No. It is also not about that you will have a report card in a circular form. No. What it basically means, you may have to look at the student assessment, the peer assessment, the teacher assessment, the parent assessment. All these assessments in scholastic and co-scholastic has to be kind of looked at. I've got a report card sample. I'll shortly kind of show it to you once I finish the presentation, because this is one question which I've been getting regularly being asked. So don't get carried by all that nonsensical thing which is running around in the community, saying that 360-degree means you do one SWOT analysis and the answer gets over. No, it is not about that. We have cheated ourselves in the past. Let's not do that. I can tell you many people who are filling up the co-scholastic area, we are still struggling. We are still struggling to go to that particular thought process. Every 360-degree report card or assessment tool is something where you need the child's progression over year on year. Every school is supposed to maintain a portfolio and a progression of a child over the 12 years of that particular kid. How many schools have? Except the report card, few samples, we put it and we keep passing on teacher to teacher, that next teacher doesn't even know what exactly needs to happen. So that's where I think a technology tool is something which will be very helpful for somebody to look at it. Differential teaching learning strategies. Everybody needs, kind of look at it. Who needs what kind of, serving, what kind of experience is something very, very important. And if you don't have something very, very differential in your teaching learning practice, in your design practice, in your assessment practice, you will never be able to kind of experience the differentiation in the teaching, learning, whatever that is happening. Let's go back to this particular pedagogical structure. Many people say, why such a pedagogical structure has come in? Now, this pedagogical structure is, we had 3 years, initial 3 years, which there was no father, mother to that particular department itself. The first 3 years of the life of any child, the people decided whatever they want to do. And whenever they will come to the first standard, the teacher will say, I have to start from first standard. Many schools also have good practices where they call that as a mother-teacher concept. When you have a mother-teacher concept, the teacher progresses with the class. So if the teacher is there in the nursery, he will move to pre-primary, what you call pre-primary, primary, and then get into the first standard, or LKG, UKG, whatever structure you may have. So first 3 years, it is not only there. The teacher will run with the kid till 5th standard. And the child doesn't get a cultural shock immediately after first standard when he's trying to put those things. That's where in the first 5 years, the quality parameter which is being looked at is fluency and literacy. Literacy and fluency and literacy is something very, very important. And if you don't have that fluency, literacy and numeracy, if you're not going to work on these areas, you are not going to get into details of it. You're not going to get into details of it. So please understand that design is done in such a way. Many people think that there will be an examination in 3 standard, 3rd standard, 5th standard, and 8th standard. How many of us know that the 3rd standard assessment is only a diagnostic assessment for the child, what the child is all about? Next 2 years, he's going to experience with you, and then there is an assessment done in 5th standard. Please understand this very, very clearly. In our classrooms, we are supposed to do these things. We have not done it. Now, at a national level, if there is going to be an assessment, this assessment will give the idea to the teacher, to the parent, to the community, to the principal, to the higher education institution. The 3rd standard, the kid had these attributes. 5th, it's evolved like this. And in 8th standard, the kid will be able to make a choice between career choices. And that's where the 9, 10, 11, 12 will come together as one block. 48 papers spread over 2 years. And I think that's something very, very important. And, we really need to kind of, appreciate this. We need to kind of, appreciate this, that this is something which is supposed to be kind of looked at. Okay, so we really need to understand that why are we trying to do all this? Why are we trying to do all this? And that's where when you come to the degree, even in degree, anytime entry, anytime exit is going to come in. So the competency, whatever the kid is going to acquire over here is going to be something very, very important for people need to look at. So whatever I said about experiential learning, integration, activity oriented, understanding your profile of your people, this is what the structure has said. I have not said. The structure is very, very clear. And this is, I think, which was supposed to be done, by many people, And we really need to understand this particular perspective, that how exactly this evolution is going to take place. Now, if you try to look at the activity, it is there at the ground level, play and activity. Then it evolves into play, discovery and activity and interactive. Then it says that integrate through experiences, give that 5th to 8th, 6, 7, 8, that kind of education. And when it comes to 9, 10, 11, 12, it is multidisciplinary. So all the PU colleges which are there when we're running 11th and 12th, you may have a lot of challenges. One of the challenges which I foresee to the schools, which is already, I feel boards will have, that when you have semester-based examination, there is only press report which is coming that we are trying to talk about annual. But still, we really need to get a clarity on this particular thought process, and we really need to kind of work on it. So please, when you try to talk about, every school has 4-3-3-5 or 5-3-3 plus. Now, when we try to talk about all the 5 subjects, we really need to understand how exactly integration will happen across subjects. Today, we were running independently as a department. You will not be able to run as a department. That's going to be very, very important for all of us to understand. So the pedagogical structure, you need verticalization. Maths from LKG to 12, you may need a one team. So you will have to follow what colleges follow as Department of Mathematics, Department of English, Department of Social Sciences. That kind of a structure will also need to come in. And that's where I said S1, S2, S3, and S4. Multidisciplinary approach, you can't look at one particular subject in isolation. The student is going to ask you a question. If I'm going to make paneer, what is the economic, connect to that? If economic connect is not happening to that, then I'm not going to kind of, take it across and drive it through. Not only this, we really need to kind of go and understand that there is a direct correlation between the learning world and world of work. So if you try to look at the competency requirement for different roles, will get defined very, very clearly based on the competencies of the child, so that the child can make right career choices, right course choices to make a future in that particular direction. If the direction is not very clearly done, I think we will not be able to kind of look at it. Coming to the last part of my presentation, where school assessment is going to become a big issue. Many people say this is the document which has been available. Go back. If you don't have, please text me or put a message to the organizers. I'll send it to them. They will share it with you. But please understand that there is need for certain things. But if you try to look at it, what are the performance areas that schools will be assessed? Again, I'm saying don't get carried by Safal and Parak. Many people are getting confused between that. They are going to be the quality indicators. No. Please understand, a Parak is to assess, take care of the board's functioning, operations, learning, and all those stuff. Safal is all about, numeracy, literacy, and that part of it. So don't try to get confused. A running of an education institution is going to have these things as parameters. Now, what is missing in my limited experience for last 15, 20 years in this particular space is that most of us don't have process defined. And all processes are independent of each other. They don't integrate. We don't have measurement. And when we don't have measurement, how will you try to say that we have done better than last year? How can you even say that how we will kind of do it? I think that's something very, very important, which is, important. Now, I have one more. Amrit Kavita has said that literacy reading is a big focus. How to make them to read more? I think I'll come back and tell you, Kavita, about it. The next is one more question is, thank you, sir, for the enriching session. Do you conduct workshops? Surely I will talk about principles and school a little later. But what I basically, find is that the process definition, integration of process or interactions of process and measuring the effectiveness of process is not at all happening. When we try to talk about the this whole SQA, which is the School Quality Assessment and Accreditation, which is draft is right now available on the public domain. You can go and pick it up. If you try to look at it, 40% comes from your teaching learning practice. 40% comes from your teaching learning practice. Your staff is only 10%, your infrastructure is 10%, your management is 10%, your leadership is 10%, and your beneficiary satisfaction is also 10%. So please understand, there's a lot of conflict on this particular area topic, saying that whether CBSE should do, not do, all that we can keep it for some other day, not today. But please understand, this is the spread. And if you don't try to focus on the teaching learning practice, you're not going to look at it. The last part is 358 assessment. Please go back and don't tell everybody that the 358, again, board examination is introduced. It's not a board examination, please. It's only student assessment. See, when the child is doing 3rd standard, 5th standard, and 8th standard, these assessments will help in the child to choose the career choices. Please understand, 6th to 8th standard. 6th to 8th standard, there are vocational things which has to be introduced. Now, people said 10 bagless days to be introduced. That means children don't have. Somebody asked me in one of the forums a question, said, do we have to carry the tiffin box with us or not? What nonsense. Bagless days means that you are trying to take the children outside the campus, trying to expose them to different vocations. So wherever your school is, 150 kilometers radius, what are the vocations which are available? You are supposed to take the children to those vocations. You're supposed to take the children to those areas, help them to understand what are the vocations which are available. And the simple mathematics, 6, 7, 8, 10, 10 days, 30 vocations you are exposing. 3, 5, 8, by the time the child also will complete the 8th assessment, his interest area, if you mix together, he will make the career choices in 9, 10, 11, and 12. He's going to make his career choices and course choices based on the assessment, the 30 vocations, what he got exposed, and then he's going to make his career choices. And again, in 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 days of internship is being made mandatory as per the new education policy on different vocational areas. So child will decide 30 days of awareness, 60 days of, that is 15, 15, 15 for 4 years, 60 days of internship. He will decide what course should I go to degree to do something or not. That's where in higher education, if you try to find out, they are only asking you to look at only one part of it. They are not saying certificate course, diploma course, never we thought about in degree colleges as such. Now, degree colleges also that will have challenges, which we'll talk in some other forum, but please understand the framework, whatever I have talked about, gets connected to OECD's framework. We really need to understand that India has to become OECD PISA learning community. Thanks to COVID, that this time we skipped for a couple of years. But last time our performance was so poor that we were second last in the list. We were second last for 75 countries which participated. We were the second last in the list in this particular thing. So we really need to understand that while we may be very good in one or two areas, but we're still struggling with regard to the basics are wrong. And PISA, and unfortunately in India, before the examination of such nature comes in, the guides are already available in the market. That's the most unfortunate thing, and we have to live with it. But please understand, you can design a beautiful framework. You can design a beautiful framework, but if the process is the key, if you don't have a process, if you don't have process intentionally, you can show to the world that we are beautiful, but it will start stinking after some time. Take it from me, it will start stinking after some time. Please, because you are all principals who are here, educational leaders, my request is go back and spend money, invest on your people and processes. Many people think that if I'm going to invest on a person, this person will run away. Please think that he or she is an ambassador of your school. He or she is going to go of your institution. If he goes as a principal in a school, take pride that how many principals did you produce as a school, which is very, very important. I've been talking about it. Processes, people don't have documented process. People don't want to document process because if I document process, somebody else can come and replace me. That fear, I think it should not be there. So please invest on these two areas. Only thing which I would like to leave it with all of you is that anything, learning is a lifelong process. There is no age to it. You can learn at any age and you can do anything, whatever you try to kind of look at it. So going forward from here, my request to all of you is that don't get too much worried and hassled. That is something which we really need to kind of look at it. There are a couple of more questions. I will kind of take it up. But before I, say thank you very much, namaste, and thanks to all the participants for, hearing me patiently. And I will have I'll try to show those address two areas which has been asked as a question. One is on, let me quickly take up those questions. Can you explain the 360? Just give me a minute. Shikha is asking, thank you so much, sir, for the interesting, sir. If you can please let us know about your programs, workshops. I'll show it in one slide. Kavita is saying literacy, reading is a big focus in every. We are finding it difficult to make them read even curriculum books, how to make them. I think one of the quickest ways is that there are apps like Freedom Apps. There are apps like Freedom Apps where you can actually calculate how much children are actually supposed to be done. And if anybody would like to know, you can go back and do a little Google on Freedom Apps, where you will find a Carnegie Mellon based assessments which is available, and people can actually go back and start working on it. And I think that is something very, very important. So you can actually go back and try to look at it. And when you try to, and there's another thing which others is again saying is that there is a big learning loss. Yes, you can use these kind of tools like what I mentioned, in terms of Freedom App, you can use that to assess what exactly is the learning loss. And it just takes 15-20 minutes. You can actually go back and look at it. There are two questions, Dr. Sonia, let me address them because many people might have not seen this. And that's where I thought that I should at least give a couple of minutes to this because it's important for them to understand how a 360-degree report card will actually look like. Okay. Now, this is how the 360-degree report card will look like typically for a student. Now, I may have that Ananya is Abhishek is one particular student, how he or she has performed in term one. I would like to know how she has performed. So I click on term one, then I come to know cycle test 1 and cycle test 2. So now if I want to know how the kids have performed in cycle test 1, I get into take a little deep dive. I have English, Hindi and other subjects. For time being, I'm just clicking on English, how the child has performed. I press on English. I try to see that assessment, speaking and listening, writing, written assessment. So that test is actually being done. Now, this particular kid, whether the kid is doing well, not doing well, what are his things which is supposed to be done? Now, I try to see that he is fair in progressing and working on this particular area. Now, the same thing I can go back and look at speaking and reading too. If I go back and click, whether he listens to other, good, meets grade level expectation. So a lot of comments also should be coming up as part of the whole design. Please understand. And that's where you will be able to go back. Suppose when you have a parent-teacher meeting, and in a parent-teacher meeting, you give this kind of a thought process that your child needs to work in this particular area. Imagine how interesting it will be for scholastic as well as for the co-scholastic area. Because one of the challenges which I have seen, co-scholastic is a challenge across schools. It is like grade ABCD, you fill it up. But when you try to talk about the co-scholastic, even in yoga and sports, if you would like to see what are the things that person is doing, you can actually get into detail. Not only this, you can also start looking at it. Let me look at a parent evaluation, which is going to become an important aspect. The emotional skill, the organization, how regulated the kid is, all these things will kind of come in. So this was just to give you a flavor, because this is a company which keeps asking, and most of my sessions, people have started asking about 360. So I requested them, please give me the login password. At least let me show you what actual thing is, rather than trying to talk about some kind of a history and geography. The second question which was asked to me was about the workshops, what we do. Okay, let me just quickly show for a minute. Okay, so people keep asking. We found out that there are only 4 pillars. One is for the leadership principle is important. The HOD is important. Now, a lot of missions have started asking. A lot of brothers, sisters, fathers have been asking how to manage mission-related institutions. So we have requested Kristu University, Lavasa campus, and we'll be doing a program with Lavasa campus in October for fathers, sisters, and brothers. Basically, they have been kind of struggling to manage their institution. So we said we will give them the real picture, how at a province level or how at a congregation level, how at a school level, you really need to kind of align your activities. And then we also do something for the owners, because head of administration is, if he is not kind of working on it, it doesn't work. And the owners, because the next generation of school owners who have come in, if there are owners, who are here part of this conversation, the next generation doesn't understand what the first generation is trying to talk about. So please try to, understand, go back, spend and do your own research. Don't even hear what I have said. Don't even go by what I've said. Go back and supplement your research with that. And once you supplement your research with this, you will be able to find a lot of value to it. And that's something very, very important. Thank you, Dr. Sonia, for the opportunity. And thank you, Dr. Augustine, and Dr. Edward, and others who have kind of, invited me for the series. I think I've missed only once, but I think this, again, good to be part of this particular session. Thank you, Parvati, for saying thank you very much. The extremely enriching session. Insightful. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Sonia. How do we go about the question answers?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Due to the lack of time, I feel that we'll avoid the question, or we can give 1 or 2 questions from the participants.
Yeah, Father Sebastian says that thanks a lot. Okay, fine. Thank you, Father.
So I think you've already answered this
Padmanabh
question.
is 1 minute. Dr. Padmanabh, please go ahead. Sangeeta Duba, thank you very much. Sweetie, thank you. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. And it was really very nice, striking hard, telling that, these are not happening and all that. And at this outset, we had also had CC in the past year. And how do you think that it will go up with this NEP? As you told, verticalization has to be done. And you've been talking about the reflection column and all those things. And that was also there with respect to CCE. Of course, I was also a part of the NEP, and I was also asking the Karnataka state government, our deputy minister also had a program with Kristu Jyanti also. I was also asking the same question to them, how do we take it until unless it has been by an individual? As a teacher in a classroom, if you are not aware of it, things go wrong. How do you address to this? How do you think it will go ahead?
Dr. Padmanabhan, I think this is where you can't, when a class size is 40, I think technology helps. I just showed you a simple example how exactly technology can make life much more easier. And my suggestion to all the principals is go back and first do a session on Bloom's taxonomy again. Many of us don't even know Bloom's. When we don't have Bloom's, how do we try to work on it? And that's something very, very important.
Fine. Very nice. Thank you very much for a very nice session. Hardcore truth you could pour out rather than talking anything. You just gave a proper hit and told, yes, this
I'm
is
sorry.
what happened.
The
No,
intent was
very
not
nice.
to hit anybody. The
Amazing.
intent
No,
was-
no, no. It was a hardcore truth. Hardcore truth. Very nice. Wonderful session. Of course, everybody would have enjoyed this.
Thank you very much. Yes, Adarsh, there's a
Thank you,
question, and then Selina. I'll take only 3, Sonia. Please.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Adarsh, you have a question?
Cool. What we've been seeing with a lot of schools is that there is a big learning loss once they've reopened. In my own school, for example, children are barely able to read most of the curriculum, or I suspect. And there is no time to address that problem as well, because there is
We
so
don't
much
know what is the actual problem per se.
Yeah,
That's where I'm saying that as I mentioned earlier, we should look at a technology tool. And there is technology tool which is available in an app like Freedom app, which is available. And I think I suggest that do a little Google. If you don't get the thing, just get back to me. I'll give them connect, because it's very important for us to go to that particular app. It will give you threadbare analysis of where exactly the loss is. And once you know where exactly the loss is, then you will be able to bridge the loss. Otherwise, it is only reteaching, not exactly happening in terms of anything. Let me make it very clear.
Can you share the link of Google? You're saying it's on Google. Okay, sir. Sure.
I will kind of share it with the organizers. They will share it with them. Please.
Sure,
Yeah, fine. Yeah, any other question? No? Okay, let me take a bail. I'm sorry I had spoken truth. So if it is hit hard, I'm sorry about it, like what Dr. Padmanabhan said. See, there are very few people who are talking very straight. And if you can hear straight, the action item for you is go back and spend the time on rediscovering your campus, what's not happening in your campus. If you have a challenge, do call me back. I'll be more than happy. Get my numbers from the organizer, or I can leave my number in the chat box itself. That itself can be one of the very important things to look for. Please, because it's very, very important. It's very, very important that until unless we have the right kind of a thought process, we will never be able to kind of go through it. So thank you very much, Dr. Sonia, for
Thank you, sir.
comparing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those wonderful insights on national education policy and all the sustainable teaching learning practices that have to be followed. And on behalf of the management, Kristu Jyanti College, I extend my warmest thanks to our esteemed resource person, Dr. Sendil Kumaran. Thank you, sir, for being with us and sharing all your valuable inputs. I convey and extend my sincere thanks to our Reverend Fathers of the management for giving us an opportunity to interact with such eminent people, and my special and profound gratitude to all the delegates for your cognizant participation. We appreciate your virtual involvement and hope you all had a knowledge-enriched experience. As
Namaste,
we have come,
stay safe. Best wishes to everybody out there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. As we have come to the end of the technical sessions, I request you all to join for the valedictory session, which will come in shortly. I request Dr. Priya Josinakara, Assistant Professor, Department of Life Sciences, Kristu Jyanti College, to kindly take over.